It's because you've got help.
Watch. Nymeria, gloves.
Impressive.
Shut up. Nymeria, gloves.
Hey guys, in this video we're going to take a look at the beloved Nymeria, Arya Stark's direwolf. This video will have spoilers through season 6 of the show and all 5 books so far. The purpose of this video is to lay out everything I could find about Nymeria in the books. In doing so, I will need to mention a couple things related to Arya and even Jon Snow, which have not yet happened in the show. I'm not going to touch on any plot or set leaks, so if you do that, please remember to use spoiler tags. But even so, the information from the books may be spoilery on its own, so watch this at your own peril. I'll tell you this though, based on the stuff we learned in the books, we can only hope that we get to see it play out in the final 2 seasons of the show. But this is your last chance to close out if you don't want to hear any of these tidbits from the books. To start with, Arya named Nymeria after a famous warrior queen from hundreds of years ago, Nymeria. Nymeria came to Dorne, married Lord Mors Martell, combined their forces, and won what is known as Nymeria's War, and essentially united all of Dorne under their rule. To this day, Nymeria is a popular name in Dorne, just like Brandon is a popular name in the North, since House Stark was founded by Brandon the Builder. And the last thing I wanted to say about the name is that we can potentially draw some loose parallels between Arya and Nymeria, as they both traveled over from Essos to Westeros and kicked some butt. But enough about the name, let's talk about the wolf. I'm going to go over 10 chapters that mention my girl Nymeria. Number 1. In Book 1, A Game of Thrones, we get a scene that is very similar to the one we saw play out in Season 1, Episode 2, The King's Road. A small difference is that in the books, Jory Castle is there with Arya, but in the show, she has to send off Nymeria alone. Either way, it was pretty sad. You know what, it's so sad I have to read this quote. "We had to throw rocks. I told her to run, to go be free, that I didn't want her anymore. There were other wolves for her to play with. We heard them howling, and Jory said the woods were full of game, so she'd have deer to hunt. Only she kept following, and finally we had to throw rocks. I hit her twice. She whined and looked at me, and I felt so shamed. But it was right, wasn't it? The queen would have killed her." We don't hear about her again for the rest of Book 1, but Nymeria pops back up at the beginning of Book 2. So number 2, Arya is headed north with Yoren, after Ned lost his head, and she overhears people talking about a pack of hundreds of wolves, led by a she-wolf. Arya reflects back on the scene from Season 1 and Book 1. Check out the wording of this is heartbreaking. Arya wonders what would happen if she crossed paths with Nymeria and thinks, "She probably wouldn't even know me now," Arya thought, "or if she did, she'd hate me." Another dude in their group then chimes in and says, "I heard how this hell bitch walked into a village one day, a market day, people everywhere, and she walks in, bold as you please, and tears a baby from her mother's arms." At this point, Arya speaks up in defense of the wolf that she assumes is Nymeria. She loves Nymeria so much that she's basically about to expose herself as Arya Stark, so Yoren wisely yells out, "Outside, boy, and see that you stay there until you learn to shut your mouth." Fun fact, when Arya steps outside, this is the first time that Jaqen speaks to her in the books. But the bigger question is, was it just a rumor, or did Nymeria actually grab a human baby from her mother's arms? On that note, moving on. For number 3, we have to skip forward to the next book, A Storm of Swords. Arya is traveling with Gendry and Hot Pie, and she sees a pack of wolves. Quote, "She cupped her hands around her mouth and howled back at them, 'Ahoo! Ahoo!' When the largest of the wolves lifted its head and howled back, the sound made Arya shiver." Now, we don't know for sure, but personally, I think that wolf was Nymeria. And I think that she was not only following Arya, but intentionally protecting her, because keep in mind, people were out searching for these kids. When Arya falls asleep that night, she has her first wolf dream. Here's the quote. "They thought that they were hunting her. She knew with all the strange, sharp certainty of dreams, but they were wrong. She was hunting them. She was no little girl in the dream. She was a wolf, huge and powerful, and when she emerged from beneath the trees in front of them and bared her teeth in a low, rumbling growl, she could smell the rank stench of fear from man and horse alike. The Lyceni's mount reared and screamed in terror, and the others shouted at one another in man-talk, but before they could act, the other wolves came hurtling out from the darkness and the rain, a great pack of them, gaunt and wet and silent." Number 4. Towards the end of Book 3, Arya is now traveling with Sandor Clegane. This chapter occurs after the Red Wedding, so Arya has seen her father beheaded, and she doesn't want to admit it, but subconsciously she knows that her mother and brother are probably dead as well. It's pretty sad. She's this little girl all alone in the world. All she wants to do is sleep all day, every day. Quote, She dreams of wolves almost every night, a great pack of wolves with her at the head. She was bigger than any of them, stronger, swifter, faster. And later in the chapter, she has another wolf dream where she finds her mother's dead body floating down the river. As Nymeria, she swims out and drags that body ashore. This is basically the start to Lady Stoneheart, but I'll save that for another video. These are her thoughts as Nymeria in the wolf dream after she drags Catelyn out of the river. Quote, "Rise," she thought, "rise and eat and run with us." The Hound then wakes her up and starts to address the topic of her mother, since Arya has been in denial lately. Arya cuts him off and says, "I know, she's dead. I saw her in a dream." Number 5 is another wolf dream after she arrives at the House of Black and White. Just a side note that the A Song of Ice and Fire wiki says that this happens in Chapter 6, Arya 1, but it actually happens in Chapter 22, Arya 2. Number 6. A character known as Septon Merrybald, who the show character Ray is partially based off of, leads Brienne and Pod to the Salt Pans. During the trip, he mentions a great pack of hundreds of wolves that are led by a monstrous she-wolf. Skip forward to book 4 and we get number 7. A few different people tell Jaime about the huge wolf pack and the trouble it is causing. Lady Amory says to Jaime, "They've lost all fear of men. Packs of them attacked our baggage train on the way down from the twins. Our archers had to feather a dozen before the others fled." Number 8. Sir Dermot returns the next day after looking for the Blackfish who has escaped from Riverrun. Sir Dermot says, "Wolves, hundreds of the bloody beggars." Before he died, Jate said the pack was led by a she-wolf of monstrous size, a dire wolf to hear him tell it, and Jaime wonders if that is the same wolf that bit his son, Joffrey. Number 9 is an interesting one. Chapter 3 of A Dance with Dragons actually starts from the eyes of Ghost, so this is actually Jon, unknowingly having a wolf dream inside of Ghost. Here's the quote. "In another place, his sister lifted her head to sing to the moon, and 100 small grey cousins broke off their hunt to sing with her. The hills were warmer where they were, and full of food. Many a night his sister's pack gorged on the flesh of sheep, and cows, and horses, the prey of man, and sometimes even the flesh of man himself." And this leads us right into number 10, which is the start of the chapter called The Blind Girl. Arya wakes up from a dream and reflects on it. Quote, "She opened her eyes and stared up blind at the blackness that shrouded her, her dream already fading. So beautiful. She licked her lips, remembering the beating of the sheep, the terror of the shepherd's eyes, the sound the dogs had made as she killed them one by one, the snarling of her pack. Game had become scarcer since the snows began to fall, but last night they feasted, lamb and dog and mutton and the flesh of man. Some of her little grey cousins were afraid of men, even dead men, but not her. Meat was meat and men were prey. She was the night wolf, but only when she dreamed." Okay, so first things first, are we going to see Nymeria in the books? Absolutely. Here's a quote from George R.R. Martin. "You know, I don't like giving things away, but you don't hang a giant wolf pack on the wall unless you intend to use it." So that's awesome. In the books, we are in for a treat. But will we get to see it play out on screen in Season 7 or Season 8? I don't know. We've all heard about the cost of CGI, so potentially the show writers have written Nymeria and a great pack out of the story. But to play devil's advocate, there may be a silver lining to any big deaths that we see in Season 7. I'm purely speculating here. But if they kill off some big characters in Season 7, then maybe they will transfer that budget from those actors to CGI in Season 8. As a high fantasy fan, I want to see dragons, fireworms, ice bears, ice shadow cats, and anything else Old Nan would have told Bran.
Riding their dead horses, hunting with their packs of pale spiders, big as hounds.
And before I end this, just wanted to give a shout out to another book series that I love called the Farseer Trilogy. Just like A Song of Ice and Fire, it's relatively light on the magic compared to other stuff like Malazan Book of the Fallen or Legend of Drizzt, and in this trilogy there's a bastard just like Jon Snow who has an affinity for animals, specifically wolves. It's a completely separate story, but I think a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire fans might like it. George R.R. Martin himself has actually endorsed this trilogy, saying that it is, quote, fantasy as it ought to be written. But that's it for this one, guys. Let's chat in the comments section about stuff like Nymeria, skin changing, warging, and whatnot. But again, please be considerate of people who don't want spoilers for Season 7 of the show. So if you know something, please use spoiler tags. With that said, this is Kev. Talk to you soon. I'm out.